Atheist Nomads, episode 208, 10th Apostaversary.
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to another episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin. Joining me is Lauren.
Hi!
And local comedian Mary Cole is back to join us again.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. This is definitely part of our, with our reformatting the show, going for a little bit more of a local focus with more local voices. We have lots of awesome atheist comedians here. And in fact, isn't it almost like half of the comedians in town?
It's getting to be really high, which is nice. It's nice to be in a community where I'm
people?
I might be.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we are also going to get non-comedians, but comedians are they like getting in front of microphones generally.
Yeah, we've got some practice at it, so
yeah.
Plus, they're funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of pressure. I have to be funny now.
You have to be funny. Entertain me.
And this is also, I think, the first time on the show where I've been the only man.
I think so. There was another man on it last time I was here.
Wesley,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, and then you got two women and two. Is it okay if we discuss?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everyone.
Yeah. We got two pregnant women. So, whole new perspective, both of which have girls.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, you're outnumbered big time.
Yep.
4-1 right now. 4-1.
That's a good panel right there.
Well, and one thing that worked out nicely was when I was going through headlines in the past week, looking at news, and the stories that caught my eye, conveniently, a big chunk of them were kind of more of a feminist angle. So,
woo!
Yeah.
That works.
Fuck the patriarchy.
Did you hear that, girls?
Yeah.
Fuck the patriarchy, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Start them young.
But we are going to go ahead and start off with Dustin Off the Degree. As I mentioned last time, July 16 of this year, so yesterday as of the day of recording, 2 days ago as of the day of release, was the 10th anniversary of me leaving religion. And I've told some of the story before on the show, I'm sure, but not in this much detail. And it's going to focus on just the very end. So I had started feeling a sense of calling to the ministry beginning of my senior year of high school, right after September 11. Then it was a mission trip to Cancun where a poisonous spider bite and infection prompted me to go ahead and accept that sense of calling and turn down an Air Force ROTC scholarship and study to be a pastor. So then I went through my undergrad.
So many regrets.
Yes, I went through my undergrad and almost quit several times. One of the times I was about ready, I wasn't going to quit. I was 2 months from graduating. But I got talked out of changing career paths by a Navy officer recruiter I was talking to. Because at that point I was thinking, I want to do whatever will take me the least amount of time still in school. And surface warfare officer was the Navy option that had the least amount of time in school. He's like, no, just go to the seminary, become a chaplain. And I let him talk me into it. Anyway, that wasn't the only reason.
That was a terrible recruiter.
Yeah. So then I went through 3 semesters of the seminary. I kept on wanting to drop out over and over and over again. Almost the entire time I was there, I wanted to quit. And I finally decided midway through the second semester to get out of the classroom. So I did 6 weeks in Jordan on an archaeological dig, and then I went to Mexico for 3 weeks to preach an evangelistic series.
Poor baby.
Back in Cancun. So by the time I'd gotten through my time in Jordan, I knew that I was ready to quit, and that chance of preaching the gospel was going to be my last stand. By the end of that, I was either my faith would be restored and I would continue, or I would quit at the end. That was the plan. I was going to do my best and preach through the series. I got to Cancun, and I got picked up by my translator and driver. There was a off-duty taxi driver who was a member of the church, chauffeured me around. I had a translator, and they took me out to the site. It was very exciting to see the place where I was going to be preaching. And she took me next door to her family's place where her grandma was cooking up some incredibly smelly Mayan food. Mayan food isn't necessarily smelly. That pot was. It reminded me of the gypsy camp in Jordan I went to, where that pot of food was just, oh man, there was some smell that just did not, yeah. And my translator's two cousins were arguing over which one of them was going to get to marry Pastor. Yeah. So
married off.
The next day was my first day preaching, and I got up and I had that church was completely packed. It probably sat 200 and there wasn't an empty seat. And I preached the first series, or the first sermon in the series. And these were canned sermons prepared by other people with slides where I was reading English and what was on the screen was Spanish. And so if I deviated too much, then people were going to get really lost. And so I had to keep on script. And I was okay with that because I could go through the traditional message and hopefully convert myself. And I went through that first sermon, which was on the Bible is a reliable source of information because of prophecy and prophecy that has come true.
Ooh,
and
toughy. As
I was preaching, I kept on saying in my head, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. And it was like, okay, how are the rest of these going to go? The second one was basically, you are a horrible sinner and you need a savior. And the whole time I was preaching that one, it was like, not buying it. The third one was the end is near and you need to get ready. And it's like, okay, none of the arguments are compelling. And the fourth one was, Jesus is the answer to all of this. And it was like, no, that just doesn't work. The fourth one was the first one with an altar call. And I was the only one out of the 15 sites or so that we had around the area. I was the only one that didn't have anybody come forward. And that didn't surprise me because I didn't even believe it. So I didn't really sleep that night as I was wrestling with, if I quit and I'm wrong, will I take anybody off of the path that God has for them? If I quit and I'm right, well, okay, there's no problem there. And I just kept wrestling through that. And like the days leading up to this, I kept getting more and more depressed because I had made a promise to myself years before to never preach something I didn't believe. And here I was, 4 sermons in a row up to that point with, I think, 23 to go.
Oh.
And I wasn't going to believe any of them. And I was like, how can I do this? And it was getting really depressing. And I finally decided, I can't. I have to quit. And so I went to the meeting that morning with all of us that had been preaching, and everybody was telling the stories about all the people that came forward for their altar calls. And I just kept my mouth shut. And then when it was done, I pulled aside the faculty sponsor from the seminary and the sponsor from the sponsoring organization for the trip. And I pulled them aside and I said, I can't continue preaching. I'm not a Christian anymore. And we talked for an hour while they probed about what does that mean. And at the end, they thanked me for my integrity and wished me the best. I walked out of that room feeling 500 pounds lighter. It was amazing. Then I shaved off the beard that I'd grown in Jordan, that I was keeping in the oppressive humidity of Cancun in August. I'd kept that beard as a symbol of my cognitive dissonance. And once it was resolved, I was going to shave it off.
That's so cute. Such symbolism.
I did. I shaved it off. And that night I had my first beer. Yeah.
In Cancun.
It was at Dos Equis.
Of your whole life?
Mm-hmm.
Or just like since you?
First time I'd ever had alcohol.
I didn't have alcohol till I left Mormon church either. But
it's so easy to not drink when you're in a community full of people who don't drink.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, pass the Diet Coke, but don't pass the beer. But at Dos Equis in Cancun. And what else did you do on that trip that I'm constantly bringing up?
Oh, so then after that, I did some touring. I hit up a bunch of clubs. Oh, with the touring, I went to Merida. I went to Playa del Carmen. I went to Isla Mujeres. I went to Cozumel. I went to Chichen Itza, Tulum, Zelha. In Playa del Carmen, I met 2 French girls, and they had another friend. They were trying to find a 4th person for a boat they were going to charter for some snorkeling. And so I went snorkeling with turtles with 3 French girls.
Yeah. As a bi woman, I'm totally jealous. God damn.
And that was it. That sealed the deal. You're like, no more church for me. I can snorkel with French women, or I can go to church.
Drink beer and smoke cigars, or I could go to church.
Yeah.
It's so much better out here.
Yeah, one of the most enlightening things was that day. So I'd gone snorkeling with these girls. I took a ferry to Cozumel, and for an extra $3 on the ferry ticket price, you can get, at the time, they were offering a snorkeling trip. So I went ahead and paid the extra money to go snorkeling again. So I went snorkeling twice that day. The boat for the second time had beer in it, and it was all you can drink. So I chugged down 3 beers, walked into the shops in Cozumel, and they started pouring me shots of tequila. I bought some knockoff Cuban cigars for way too much money. Thank you, tequila. Sat down, lit the cigar, took about 3 puffs, and I sat down because I was shit-faced. I needed to sit down. And I lit the cigar, and I took about 3 puffs, and the nicotine buzz hit. And that, combined with the alcohol buzz, created a very familiar euphoric experience that I'd only experienced in highly spiritual situations before that.
Interesting. That is very interesting. Just with how close the 2 experiences were together. I can totally see that. Mine was a little more spread out over time.
Most people's are. The fact that he managed to do this all in 5 days is pretty rare.
That is really interesting.
Oh, heck, it only took me 3 days to find out I can't drink gin.
Well, get that out of the way right away.
Yeah. And it also only took me 4 days to find out that I don't black out until 18 drinks.
Jeez.
That's a lot for when we first start drinking. 18 drinks a lot. I remember that, though. Like, I don't know if you had any context for, like, alcohol consumption. I didn't, because I was raised Mormon, so I had no idea. I had no idea what was an appropriate amount of alcohol for a human being to consume in one sitting. I didn't know the difference between a tequila shot and a glass of wine.
Yep.
Nothing. So I remember those, like, the first few months, of trying to, like, figure that out. And you're brave to do that in Mexico by yourself.
Oh, yeah. I got roofied once.
Oh, Jesus. In Mexico.
Yeah, that same trip. It was the day I'd gone back to Isla Mujeres.
Those French girls, wasn't it?
No. I was walking back from the, let's see, I talked to 2 girls on the ferry. They didn't trust the buses. So I ended up taking a cab with them because we were heading back to the same area. And then when I was walking back to my hotel, these 2 local girls kept talking to me. And I ended up sitting down and having a drink with them. And then their friends started showing up. And then all of a sudden, I went from almost buzzed to the world was spinning around me. And it was like, oh, wait a minute. They're trying to rip me off. I need to get out of here. And I made it back to my...
Good for you.
Yeah, that's pretty good to be in that state of mind.
If you weren't such a large person...
Oh, and what they had spiked was a liter bottle of beer. I hadn't had that much out of it yet. If I had finished it, I would have been completely
done.
Fucked. Yeah. Instead, I
lost a lot of money. That's for sure.
Only had enough that I was able to stumble back to my hotel, take out my contacts, and collapse in my bed, and I was out.
Yeah, you had an okay night when you can get your contacts out.
Yeah,
like, you did fine. That's how I know. If I wake up and I can't see anything, I'm like, I did okay last night. I was
all right. That's a good way to gauge it.
I got him out. We're good.
Yeah.
They're probably even in the case. So let me ask you this. So you said you decided you weren't a Christian anymore, kind of in that moment. How big of a step was it from you from, I don't believe in this religion, I'm not Christian anymore, to I'm an atheist? Was that over some time or gradual, or was it pretty well all at once?
It took 6 months. So right there initially, I considered myself, and this is going to sound incredibly pretentious, but keep in mind...
You're pretentious?
I had a degree in theology and just done a year of seminary studies. So
yeah, you're totally pretentious.
Yes, I considered myself briefly a post-Christian theist.
Okay. Gotta put a label to everything.
Which, what that basically meant at the time was a more personal version of an otherwise deistic God. So not quite a deistic God, probably pretty close to the Christian form of Unitarianism. And then it went from there to just straight up deist, to why do I need a God of the gaps, to, oh, hey, I'm an atheist. Wait a minute. I'm not a communist. Oh.
Wait a minute, I don't rape people and eat babies. What?
Yeah, 6 months.
All right. Oh, I think where it probably was for me.
Now, I don't remember when that final moment I considered myself an atheist was, but I at least had the ability, because I had kept trying. I've been blogging on MySpace when I was at the seminary and through my travels, and I kept trying to write a post because I'd gotten really good at doing thinly veiled writing about my doubts, that people who wanted to see it as this is a deeply spiritual person going through spiritual struggles, and he's a great man for it, could see that. And those who wanted to see, oh, he's on his way out, could see that. I couldn't write that then. And so I had 4 or 5 drafts, and I was able to look back at those drafts when I blogged about it again later on dwnomad.com in 2010 or 11. No, 2010. And I was able to place the exact date as July 16.
Which you'll forever call your, what did you call it?
Apostaversary.
Apostaversary, which sounds delicious.
It does.
Maybe that's why I kept craving Alfredo.
All right. Well, Atheist Nomads is proudly brought to you by Archway Hosting. Get their low-price, full-featured hosting solutions at archwayhosting.com. That's ARCHWAY hosting.com. And we're also brought to you by listeners just like you. We have a new patron this week, Josh.
Josh, yay!
Who also helped me with my fuel filter. Or fuel pump.
Banged his car.
Yep. So
with
thank you, Josh. And now it is time for news. We're going to start off with the happy story.
The happy story.
The happy story. Malta is a predominantly Catholic country in the Mediterranean where abortion is illegal, and since 2014, same-sex couples have been able to enter civil partnerships and adopt. Now, in a 66-1 vote in the country's parliament, same-sex marriage is legal.
Hooray! Yay! To 1.
Yeah. So now, instead of the declaration of you are now husband and wife in civil ceremonies, they will now say you are now spouses.
Yeah, I love how far they went. When I read this article, how far they went with everything. It was like parents, adoption. They reworded all the legal documents for
obviously there was overwhelming support.
And I love what a landslide it was too.
Yeah.
That it didn't barely squeak by, but it was almost unanimous.
Yeah.
I mean, that's closest to unanimous as you can get.
Right. And the one no vote was from Edwin Vassallo or Vassillo.
Yeah, we're calling you out.
Who said a Christian politician cannot leave his conscience outside the door.
Boo. You should. When it comes to other people's happiness.
Yeah. Well, it's even simpler than that. You should leave it behind the door if there is no secular reason for a policy when you are trying to govern everyone.
It's not about your conscience. It's about being able to separate out what's good for your whatever size community you're governing, like your town, your country, your whatever. What's good for them versus how you feel about an issue personally, especially if it's out of theology, if it's a theological reason. If you can't name a secular reason, scientific reason, a logical reason to make something law or not make something law, then it shouldn't play a factor.
It has no business in government at that point.
And you're still allowed to believe whatever you want as a politician, but you got to be able to separate the two if you're going to govern fairly or if you're going to make policy fairly.
Right. And long-term same-sex partnerships have happened for almost forever. And when you look at the reasons to allow same-sex marriage, even if you want to completely ignore the fact that it is the right thing to do for your people, there is just the fact that it makes ending that relationship so much easier. If you have access to divorce, it makes, especially if there are children involved, it makes everything easier if you have to break up or if someone dies.
Which is also newly legal there. Read that. Divorce has only been around since 2011.
Right.
Wow.
For the article. Which
maybe
I love.
That's what pushed them over. They're like, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah. I love like the amount of progress in such a short amount of time though, too. Like divorce became legal, civil partnerships, and then gay marriage, like all within the span of half a decade. That's pretty dang good progress.
Abortion is next.
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing.
See, all I think about is when a country like that allows same-sex marriages, oh man, you're going to get so much tourist bucks from location weddings.
Oh yeah, especially since
I mean, it's freaking Malta.
Yeah, well, and same-sex actually marriage is still to come in most of Central and Eastern Europe, and all but one country in Africa, and all of fucking Asia. Seriously, Asia, get your collective acts together.
Yeah, there's really no excuse for that, Japan. Come on.
Uh-huh.
There's really not.
Yeah.
It's one country at a time, though. That's as quick as you can do
Baby
it. So
steps.
hopefully, like the more countries that start to accept it, the faster other countries will start to accept it. So hopefully this is...
Yeah.
I mean, Malta, that's pretty obscure.
Well,
little country to...
Just got Germany last month.
Yeah.
That's... Progress is still happening. And we're lucky that North America is the first continent to, if you don't include Central America, it is the first continent to have same-sex marriage everywhere. If you do include Central America, which most people do, then we still have a long ways to go.
Yeah, still a bit. Population-wise, though.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
And, one final thing on Malta. There's actually two governments of Malta. There is the actual government of the Republic of Malta, the one that has a UN seat and all of that. And then there is the Order of Malta, which has observer status at the UN and is basically a department of the Vatican.
Very Catholic.
Order of Crusaders who had ruled over Malta for, I think, 200 or 300 years until they were finally kicked out in the 1800s.
They've just kind of stuck around.
They went to Rome as a government in exile and then just eventually got absorbed into basically just being a department of the church that still has their own diplomatic missions in numerous countries and observer status in the UN.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it really is.
They're a highly Catholic population, but that they are moving towards secular pretty quickly. Like had more secular marriages than religious marriages this year. I read that right, something along those lines.
Very nice.
Yeah, so, or at least fairly equal. So,
yeah. All right, now we got a couple of domestic political stories. President Trump has been notably absent from public appearances outside of state visits to other countries in the last few weeks, but he made time on Tuesday of last week to have a bunch of evangelical pastors come over and lay their hands on him and pray for him and Vice President Pence.
Well, they have to protect him from all the witches.
This story made me uncomfortable. I'd actually read this one. I mean, I'd read a few things on this before this podcast, but something about it made me uncomfortable. I know prayer in the White House has always been a thing. All the presidents have done it. It's just kind of a part of it. But something about this particular story, and I think it's the picture. You guys know the picture I'm talking about? Where it's him from his back. Yeah. With all their hands on him. And I think it's because you can't figure out from that picture if they think that they're transferring something to Trump or if Trump is transferring something to him. Like, do they think he's some sort of like major spiritual leader, or do they think that they're, I don't know, just something about it really
it's very idealistic.
It's like that.
Now with my religious background, I'm very familiar with the laying on of hands while praying. It is this weird thing that, like, Adventism is pretty skeptical of basically everything except, well, a lot of things except for prophecy, God, and special creation. But they are skeptical of a lot of the normal things you find in religion, like anything that's even seems remotely magical to them, except for the laying on of hands and anointing with oil, because somehow that conveys magical power. By placing your hands on someone while you pray, somehow you're becoming
sincere.
You're becoming like a conduit between them and God, and it makes you praying on their behalf to God more powerful. And it's really weird when it's coming from a bunch of people who believe that any prayer is the same.
Praying for a man who doesn't believe in any of that. Probably.
Yeah, that makes me so crazy too, with like Obama, the whole Obama Christian Muslim thing, and then Trump gets into office, somebody who is clearly not religious, obviously not Christian.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Obviously, I don't have a problem with him not being religious. That's not my issue with Trump. But everyone...
Except he's using it to...
Yeah, and it's so obvious to me that he is using it to build his base.
Yeah.
And his base doesn't seem to have a problem with that.
Well, pray for more votes.
He picked Pence for his running mate because Pence is the Christian guy.
Yeah, he's opposite.
Right, his whole I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order, like that's sort of his catchphrase. And it kind of goes back to the Malta thing, where it's you have to be able to, if you're governing a group of people, you have to be able to leave that outside of your decision making. It cannot be your primary reason for making decisions for a country.
Yeah,
any country, especially the United States with, I mean, the military that we have, the power we have. You cannot think that you're making divine decisions. And I think that's what makes me uncomfortable about the Trump picture too, is that these people think this is a divine man. Pence thinks that he's inspired by God for the decisions he makes, and that
is
can
terrifying.
Lead to some shady decision making.
Yeah,
if you feel, I mean, in my personal life, when I was religious, I made bad decisions when I thought that God was on my side. You know, I felt justified. If you're the president, or you feel the president's justified in bad decision making because God's on his side, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah,
it is.
It is. What I found, the thing that disturbed me the most with it was they invited that many people into the Oval Office to touch the president.
It was a photo op. I mean, I'm sure they did tons of security.
They should have all had their arms broken by Secret Service.
Photo op.
That's the part that caught me as odd, is that they were actually allowed to touch. It should be like strip club rules around the president. No touching.
And you think if there's that many people of any other religion too that wanted to touch the president, that would not fly.
Right.
You want to get that many Muslims around to touch it? No, people would lose their minds.
Right. And that many people packed in that tightly, if anybody close had anything nefarious planned, the Secret Service would have been unable to act.
Damn.
It is it was a
perfect opportunity, people.
That was a terrible security mistake.
I hadn't even considered that, but you're dead on.
You're right. Sure. I just don't think that they care.
I don't think that crossed their mind. I think it was, like you said, it was all about the photo op. It was all about the picture and the growing that Christian conservative base.
Yeah.
And
no touchy.
I wouldn't even be surprised if half the people in that photo were actors hired by the Secret Service.
Hand models.
You
just see their hands.
The scary thing is, no, those were all evangelical leaders.
Oh, okay.
Those were all pastors.
Pastor.
Yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, he's been not making public appearances, which is why this story got so much attention.
Right, because every time he shows up, everybody's like, so about Russia. And he's like, nope. I'm not going to talk about that. It's been going on for 6 months.
8 months.
It's crazy.
It started basically on Election Day.
It's all strategic. He can't say something really fucking stupid if nobody's talking to him.
Well, that's true.
I mean, he's found a way.
They still let him on
say
Twitter.
Some stupid stuff, but
always find a way.
Yeah, they his handlers, and he has them. They need to figure out that he needs to be treated like a toddler, and they need to limit his screen time.
Yes.
Or maybe that's just like the way they found that he can do the least amount of damage. Like with a toddler, hand him the iPad and just let him do whatever, and at least they're not, firing off nukes.
The country.
Out destroying the country. Some shady tweets maybe, but could be worse.
But it is actually doing damage for his policy, because per Sean Spicer in a press conference, his words in tweets are the word of the president and are to be taken as such. So those are legally binding as presidential proclamations.
Yeah, that was his mistake.
Yeah, but Sean Spicer has also said the opposite in that, you know, he didn't really mean that. You have to look at what he's saying between the lines. And so it just depends on how it suits him. Whatever works best.
He meant to say Kofefe.
Yeah. Oh,
it's a secret magic word.
Yeah.
Should name the baby Kofefe.
Oh, hell no. No. Kylie will be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is much hated by many because of the way she handled her role as the DNC chairman, proposed an amendment to an appropriations bill that would have removed section 116 of the bill, which was a rider that prohibits the IRS from enforcing the ban on 501c3 groups from partisan politics if they are churches. So it still applies if they aren't churches, but if they are churches, then it can't be enforced.
Seems so backwards to me.
Yeah.
Like those are the folks with agenda and ideology and opinions to push.
Right. So this amendment she's proposing would have just removed that section from it. So leave the Johnson Amendment alone. And unfortunately that failed 24 to 28.
So close.
But that's close enough that you would hope that next time it comes up, because it will come back, I think. It's that close. Next time, hopefully it will be even closer, or it will pass. I mean, that's a small enough number of people that it could shift.
She got enough support that it will be tried again on the House floor, and the odds of this actually making into a bill that would get through the Senate is a lot slimmer.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, especially since Trump and Pence seem to just have really hunkered down on this. They really want to take down the Johnson Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And he's wishy-washy on a lot of things, but, you know, if they decide that that's done for, then they have enough of a base to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sad. It's a backward step for America.
All right. It's time for another break, and I'm going to get another beer. And then we have some feedback.
Would you want me to get it for you?
Sure. Oh, yeah. I hurt myself. From Rainier via Facebook. I like the new guy. He seemed to challenge you more. Hope he sticks around. That was Mikey. Yes, Mikey is awesome. He will be back.
I have him pretty regularly.
He's very busy. So he's really busy. He's working on like 20 different projects. So actually being able to get him on consistently wouldn't work well. Plus, I want to get more voices, not just a new voice. So, we're going to...
Plus, he tends to talk over Dustin, which I think Dustin
Mikey,
might hit his ego just a little bit.
Oh, man.
Just a little.
Okay, last week I thought he was doing that to me. And then when I actually looked back at the audio, I still talked more.
Yeah, it's all in your head. It's all in your head. No, Mikey's awesome. His dog is awesome. And he was just at the very first queer comedy festival in Portland, which is awesome. They need one of those here. Or did they have one here?
I think Mikey actually did something.
They
or
did,
was working
didn't they?
on. I know the last Comedy Atheist experience he did, the one I was on, was all either women or not straight men.
That's
like
true.
there's
It
no
might as
straight,
well
no
have
straight
been.
white dudes on the show, which was great. But I thought he was either working on something or maybe had done something. But I also might just be thinking of the show.
There may have been a one night queer comedy thing for
he's
Pride.
done,
it seems like
he's
there
done
was
stuff with Pride, but this is the first ever queer comedy festival ever,
like in the country,
in the
right?
world.
Oh well, okay then. Funny people.
Yeah. So I'm sure he had a lot of fun there.
While we're talking about that, he does have another show coming up in August, the Atheist Comedy Experience. He has shown interest in maybe spreading that around.
Oh, yeah.
To other communities. So if you live in a community where you have some comedians who might be interested in doing something similar, we can get you in contact with Mikey, and he might be able to offer some organizational tips.
Or he can bring comedians from Boise. Boise's just one of those areas where there's just enough religion here and just enough non-religious people that it's really interesting.
It works really well.
Is, yeah. Because everyone's familiar with the big religions here. They know them well enough, or they were a part of one, that when they're not anymore going to those atheist shows, so that was really fun. They always sell out. And he's a good person to work with, too. I like working with him and doing his shows. So,
and next month's show is going to be, what is it, 4 nights?
Is it? That's awesome. Good for him.
3 or 4 nights.
It's more than the 2 that he normally does.
Well, the first few
one.
was just 1, and then he started doing 2.
1 sold out, 2 sold out, so I'm not surprised if he's doing 4, because it's really popular. It's like the most popular show that club does.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the most packed rooms I've done at Liquid. So.
Yeah. Oh, and one goal I do have, on the same note of how he did a show with not a single straight white man, I have a goal of it being rare for this show to only be straight white men.
I like that.
It will happen. I guarantee it.
You can't have it not happen.
Yeah.
I want it to be rare.
But yeah.
That's
a good goal. Goal.
It is a good goal.
Because we are humanists.
And from Kitchen Sink, at Horrid Wars on Twitter, at Atheist Nomads, good luck with the new format, guys. Thank you. And for a local story, the Goodness Land is a Middle Eastern restaurant in Boise run by Salam Bunyan, who came to the U.S. in 2008 as a refugee from Iraq and is now a U.S. citizen. Well, on Tuesday of last week, someone drew swastikas, Nazi lightning bolts, and wrote, "Refugees shop here," in front of his restaurant.
I bet that was so clever, too. A little refugees thing. You know, you hear about this stuff happening, but it's so much sadder when it's your own community. You're like, no, not my people. Like, my people don't do stuff like this, right? But then they do, and you realize there are people who suck everywhere, even in your own awesome community.
It's literally 4 miles from here.
Yeah, it's super
just
close.
down the road.
Yeah, my husband and I are like, hey, let's go eat there when you're done with your podcast, because we've never tried it, and now we've heard about it. So hopefully it worked against this guy. And a lot of other people heard about him, and he's getting just tons of business.
I love Middle Eastern food, and the only Iraqi food I've had was in Jordan from a Iraqi refugee in Jordan. And Boise is proudly a refugee city, and so we've been getting a lot of refugees from Somalia and Iraq, Syria, and the like lately. In the 90s, we got a lot from Albania, Kosovo, and Bosnia, and it ends up being a lot of Muslim refugees who come to white bread Boise, and 99.9% of the time everybody's happy and it just works, nothing's wrong. And then you've got these rare little situations that just make everybody else in the city very angry, because we are proud to be a refugee city.
Yeah, we are. Like, Boise is this like slightly more liberal overall for Idaho area, open-minded, small little kind of arts town. We don't want swastikas on our sidewalks. I mean, I don't think that most people do, but we're proud of the kind of town that we are and that we've become. So it is like, it's hard to see. Mm-hmm. So I hope they find that Joker, and I hope that they throw the book at him. And
refugees, they move here. Some find jobs. A lot start businesses. Mm-hmm. Delicious businesses.
Delicious businesses, for sure.
Yeah.
Don't cause problems. Like,
I think that the biggest problem that has come up is Boise High School has had some difficulty with being able to accommodate so many ESL students from so many different languages.
Do they have a higher percentage ending up at Boise High than they do at the other high schools?
Yeah.
We have an elementary school that's right down here. I can't remember which one it's called, but it's got over 100 languages that they have to deal with.
Oh, seriously?
And that's an elementary school. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's all centered on the bench, mostly around Orchard. But, yeah. It's the only issue is that they need more education funding to get more staff to help with these ESL programs, because the students all love it.
Yeah, I think more education funding it's a good solution to the problem.
To that one.
Yeah, I think everyone from every walk of life can say, and
not spend it all on some broadband contract that falls through, or send it all to.
No, that was a broadband contract that probably personally profited the governor. That was straight up illegal corruption.
Less of that.
Yeah,
less of that. More. Like one of those things where I feel like we really all can agree on that, and it still is not happening. Like, more money to schools. Who would disagree with that? It's a good thing. education.
People who are retired and don't have kids, and people who don't have standing basically are like, well, I'm not going to pay extra taxes so that somebody's kid can go to school. It's like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
It's a really small picture though, because you pay for a kid to go to school, and maybe that doesn't directly affect you immediately, but then that kid maybe goes to college or a trade school or starts a business, and then they bring more business here, and that grows jobs, and maybe you're retired by the time that affects your community, but also at the same time your grandkids are now coming up in a community where they have more opportunity because people are more
That's
educated.
why I could never live outside of a college town, because at least there's some respect for education, because most people are educated. Of course,
at least more.
It explains the little blue dot in Ada County. It's like, boop.
Oh, I wish it was the county. No, it's just Boise.
In Ada County.
Oh,
it's
yes.
the little blue dot.
And yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to some, well, at least a international one. This one is, goddamn. Yeah. Rajabi Khurshid was a 18-year-old woman in Tajikistan who, thanks to an arranged marriage to a 40-year-old Zafar Pirov, and yes, I shouldn't even bother trying to do the names. I like doing the names.
I like you doing the names. It's very amusing.
Yes. Her husband didn't believe the results of her government-required virginity test.
Get that government-required virginity test.
Just part of the standard tests, HIV tests, virginity tests, you know. So he had her take and submit to 2 more. He still didn't believe the results, so he then asked her for a second wife. Then she killed herself. 40 days after the wedding, she killed herself.
That seems, I mean, at face value, you're like, that seems like an extreme case. But it's really, as somebody who grew up in a community where your purity was your worth, and they wouldn't say it like that. But looking back, that's really what it was.
It is.
That's what it was, when your whole worth is wrapped up in this. And then you either don't have that worth due to whatever happened in your life, or somebody questions it, then it really does. I mean, it does wreck your whole worldview, your self-esteem.
And not just the girl, but the girl's parents, the girl's family. They all, the whole daddy-daughter thing that has come up in the Mormon culture recently, where the dad is super proud of his virgin daughter and takes her out on virgin dates. And have you ever heard of that?
It's not just Mormons. It's like it's gotten really big in just most religious communities. And that like you marry your daughter.
Yes.
Ceremony.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really, so this isn't confined to like these small Muslim communities where, you know, it's everywhere in religion that they place so much importance on your sexual purity, which is not even a real thing. Like that is not real, but they put so much importance on it that, I mean, what do you expect? What do you expect the outcome to be?
And after 3 tests confirming that she was a virgin, what's his deal?
Yeah.
It just sounds to be like he got a bride he didn't want.
She did everything that she was expected to do is what it sounds like. And she still could not be found pure enough for this man that she was going to spend the rest of her life with.
And sounds like she didn't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
No. Well, of course she doesn't.
Yeah, and she's probably told, you know, you do these things, we'll arrange your marriage, stay a virgin. That's all you got to do, and then your life will be great. And she did it, and it didn't work out that way. I mean, it's completely, I don't know,
because
Handmaid's Tale.
If she tried to escape that, get a divorce or anything like that, she would have been so ostracized by the community.
That was her one chance at marriage.
Her parents maybe wouldn't have even taken her back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, her parents' response was, this was slander and untrue, not this was unfair for you to treat my daughter this way. Their response was basically, she was too a virgin. Yeah. Like, again, like that was the important part of the conversation. Yeah. That she was a virgin.
3 tests said she was.
Yeah, the important part was that she was mentally and emotionally abused for 18 years until she couldn't really take it anymore.
And then the abuse got even worse for 40 days.
Yeah.
And she killed herself because of it. The fairy tale she got sold as a child didn't pan out.
I don't know. I just have a feeling that the guy just got what he wanted. He didn't want this particular bride, so
he basically tortured her till she went away. And I don't think probably suicide was what his end game was, but that's, I think, ultimately what he wanted. You're right, wanted somebody different, and that's when women are chattel, basically. Yeah. Like when you're trading them in and out of families. I mean, it's sad. It's hurtful. It's sad to my heart and sad to me as somebody who's about to have a girl in this world. Like because I think we've really evolved in this country, not as far as we should, but it's also, we're so close to going backwards,
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be
every day it's a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be so much easier to shift backwards than it would be to move forward.
Yeah.
The country. So it's scary that things like this are still happen.
Arranged marriages really just need to stop. It's one thing if parents want to play suggestive matchmakers, or they shouldn't ever go past that.
I've heard that some arranged marriages are very successful. I mean, maybe there's something to not having to date somebody. You just learn to love them. But if abuse is not cool no matter what.
If you could somehow do it without the social pressure, without that community pressure, if it could be like, I don't know, if both people who are in the arranged marriage were like, this is what we want. We want our parents who are wiser than us to pick our spouse. That's fine, But when you're coercing women into marrying, because this guy was 40 and she was 18, and I know that happens everywhere. Like, people choose with that age gap, and the age gap isn't the issue, but when you're basically coercing a young girl into a marriage with a much older man, who realistically is not a virgin himself if he's 40. Like,
no.
Yeah.
So, but you know what I mean? Like, that's such a different, same thing with Mormonism. When it comes up, polygamy, it wasn't an issue for me. It was the coercion part of polygamy that really made me start stepping back from the Mormon church. It was the young girls. It was I'm a divine leader. If you don't marry me, your family will go to hell part. That is what the problem was. You want to be like polyamorous, polygamous, you want to be an arranged marriage, and that's what everyone wants. That is such
consenting adults. That's all
so
it takes. And we seem to struggle with that still in this world, and it's our duty to try and fix that as best we can.
And the arranged marriages that work out better, probably, I would assume, would be in cases where they've met each other before, they actually have a chance to opt out, and there's not such a huge age and experience difference.
No, I assume that it was probably in India. You're looking at same caste systems. You're looking at people, a boy and a girl that grew up together, and at age 8 or something, their parents decide, he's going to go and be a doctor, and he's going to support my daughter, and everything's going to be great. She'll bear him children, and there you go. Contract signed. Oh, well.
All right. We need to go through some more feedback. We got a voicemail from Jonathan Ariola.
You gonna play the full voicemail?
All 3 minutes.
Okay.
Either Jonathan
better be good.
Scripted it out perfectly to fit within the 3-minute allotted time, or he got cut off. I'm not sure which.
Hey everybody, it's Jonathan Ariola again, because I like you. That's why. Listening to episode 204. In discussions in reference to Dan Carlin's article or podcast that he put out, as well as your conversation and looking about how all of this fits together with the escalation of violence amongst the different groups that are out there. And as I'm listening to the conversation, I keep thinking to myself, why? Why would someone be so angry to think that that's even something that they'd want to do? The whole concept of radicalization often is geared towards looking at Islamic terrorism. And there's a lot of different research that's been done, sanctioned by our United States government, to look at how that works, how it functions. The fun thing about that research is that it also applies to everything. So you can have radicalization within the Republican Party, within the Democratic Party, within the anti-vaxxer people, along with anything, including, us. And it was fun to see that Atheists on High saying that they were the highest podcast. And that was a great moment for all of us to decompress, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. But as I begin to think about, well, what are some of the causes that would bring this about? What are some sources that really push that kind of radicalization? And it comes back to an idea that I've pitched around before, which is isolation. Isolation being one of the key factors, as far as I know, when it comes to radicalization. That your social network, physical social network, as well as those things that you listen to, spend time on, whether it's Fox News or any other type of broadcast medium, whether you're listening to that or hanging out with that one creepy atheist dude on the internet and he's trying to, bad stuff, whatever the situation is, that when you become isolated and away from other people, your brain goes in a direction. You start to cult up a bit with those people, and the exact opposite happens when you don't. To expand out your social network to those that are just a little bit different from yourself, a little bit more. There was a period of time with the fake news when it first popped up and the whole concept of echo chambers and the like. And I think that maybe it's a conversation that needs to come back in, something that we need to talk about some more. Because maybe if we reduce our isolation, everyone reduces their isolation and doesn't have that echo chamber around them, then we'll all normalize. And the whole heated passion of trying to murder someone doesn't sound as interesting as having a sit down watching a ball game, having a beer, having a nice conversation, a dinner or a meal, and spending time barbecuing in your front yard. Stuff that we used to think were so important with American culture seems to be not so much. It's a commercialized thing rather than something we do.
It's definitely a big factor.
You have to admit that the people who are listening to this podcast are probably all of the same mindset. If you're not, you'd stop listening, right? So it is kind of easy to get constant positive feedback on your own personal beliefs.
And I think I have this thought a lot on Facebook, and there are sometimes people post things where I'm like, I have to not be friends with you on Facebook anymore. But I also wonder, like, where is the line between isolating myself from anything that's outside of my own ideology and, like, where have I stopped being open-minded, or am I just cutting out things that I find hateful and hurtful? Or do I just find it's such a gray area to be open-minded to things without letting in things that are going to be harmful.
Yeah, right. It's you always want to be open-minded and be open to new ideas and find something in common with the other person. But let's be honest, if the other person represents the exact opposite ideology from you, you're not going to get along in the long run.
Yeah. But the echo chamber is definitely a factor, as they put it so very well in Men in Black. A person is smart, but people are stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All you need is something scary, and if you can convince enough people in an isolated echo chamber, we'll just stick with that term, enough people in the same echo chamber that this is scary, they will make themselves more and more scared. And if
they'll hype it up.
Yeah, they'll hype it up. And once you reach the point where the scariness begins, you at least start to think it threatens your physical safety, that's when violence begins.
And you end up writing refugees outside of somebody's restaurant.
Or shooting someone on the street.
Or just shooting somebody who's obviously of a different culture or a different race or a different gender or... Yeah.
And that's because those people think they're so right. And it, like, when I see that, when you see people do stuff like that and they think they are right and they think they are being helpful and they think they are making the world better by doing that awful stuff, like, for me personally, it makes me question my own ideology. I'm like, but I think I'm so right, I think I'm so right about these things. What am I super wrong about? And I'm just, I haven't shot anybody, so I think I'm doing better than them.
You're doing okay.
I'm doing okay. I haven't killed anybody. I haven't written hate speech.
You didn't say you didn't kill anyone. You said you didn't shoot anyone.
I didn't shoot anybody. I haven't hurt anybody. I don't write hate speech on people's sidewalks. But at the same time, like, I feel really right a lot of the time, and they feel really right. So
yeah,
it's hard. They're obviously wrong.
Obviously,
but it's, I don't know.
Yeah,
it makes you question.
This segues nicely into our next story. Cardinal Raymond Burke, one of the highest ranking Catholics in the U.S., and obviously somebody who is in an echo chamber that fits with the exact narrative he's developed, spoke to the group called the New Evangelization, with man in the middle of evangelization. Yeah, where he blamed the pedophile priest issue on women and feminists. Why? Well, as he put it, apart from the priest, the sanctuary has become full of women. The activities in the parish and even the liturgy have been influenced by women and have become so feminine in many places that men do not want to get involved.
This hurts.
Yeah.
Because pedophilia has only existed in the past 5 years? No. This goes back 50 years. This goes back hundreds.
Yeah, you got caught.
Thousands of years.
Now you guys have been caught, and you're looking for some way to make this somebody else's fault.
Yeah, funny.
And,
It
let's
wasn't
make it the women's fault.
It wasn't a normal orgy of priests that we reported on. It was a gay orgy of priests. There was not any women involved there.
No, this tries to take the heat off of the whole fact that if you allowed priests to marry, or at least in some way allow priests a legal, ethical, sexual outlet, that fewer will rape children.
God, I mean,
and that you might even be able to recruit a higher caliber of priests who aren't going to rape children. One or the other. So it takes some of it off of that. And also, what he's talking about, that fits the stats. 60%, as of when I was in the seminary 10 years ago, 60% of all people in attendance at a church on a given weekend were women. In some churches, it's a full, many churches, it's a full 2/3. And in some, it's pushing 80%. Men don't go to church. And we talked about it in class as to why. And the biggest conclusion we could all come to is that the Christian message does not fit with the Christian concept of what a man is. It is inherently touchy-feely. It is about having a close, intimate relationship with a man. And if you demonize homosexuality, and if you want men to be all masculine on their own, insensitive...
I'm not Christian, that's gay.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, I could definitely see that point, but that I just cannot believe that somebody would say that when there are people under him who are raping children.
Yeah, like that's the problem. I mean, the problem is not women in the church. The problem is that the clergy are raping children. That's the problem.
It's not even about access to children. It wouldn't even solve the problem to take children out of church until they're like a certain age. It's the fact that the adult is making a conscious decision to rape children.
Yeah, the number one problem here is the adult that is raping the child. Like, that is ultimately their fault, their problem.
Every time.
But directly below that, there are also a lot of cultural and systemic issues within the church that are causing people who will do something like that to get high enough that they have power over these small children. And then also, like I said, there are a lot of sexual repression issues, which we all know only leads to problems. Like, it just leads to problems. So there are a lot of other issues, but like way down here is the fact that women make up the majority. Like way down here, like not even really on the list.
They're the
is
ones
the fact
that are
women
putting their, the money in the coffers, and they're going to turn around and blame them for all their problems. No,
and you say like men, and I actually think that's a really good point. Like that religion, Christianity is really touchy feely, and it's about having this relationship with a man. I can see how that would turn men off, but at the same time, religion sort of preaches this idea that femininity mostly is somehow inherently offensive and should be confined to this box. So it's not, I don't know where I'm going, but you know what I mean? Like, femininity is inherently offensive to most religious leaders. And women can cross over into the masculine, and it seems to be more widely accepted. But if men cross over into the feminine, then we find that very offensive somehow. So that, and this is just a good example of that, of him pinpointing femininity and being like, that's the problem, is this over here, instead of dealing with the actual issue, which is
and whenever
people raping
like
children.
A cardinal was saying that, I'm like, do you talk to your mother with that mouth?
Well, but when you look at the Catholic Church, one of the biggest factors is there is 7 sacraments. Any given person can only fulfill 6 because 2 are mutually exclusive: marriage or celibacy. And a man who likes women can still get his ticket checked for heaven by marrying a woman. A man who doesn't like adult women, so either a gay man or a pedophile, I am not trying to equate the two, but those would both, because there is a certain percentage of the population that has a natural attraction or innate attraction to children. As terrible as that is, there is a certain percentage of the population, when you've got a group as large as the Catholic Church, they have an outlet that gives them easy, frequent access to altar boys with little to no supervision.
Or consequences.
And power and a sense of authority.
Yep.
And the children see them as an authority figure, which is just a...
And then they're just taught that this is
for...
normal, and that when you grow up and become a pastor or something, you do it too. It's like, no, let's not perpetrate that anymore.
And I see when I hear about stuff like this, I always think about it in the context of my own religious experience growing up. And I've only recently found out, like, pedophilia is actually a really big problem in the Mormon church too. Mm-hmm. Who knew? Because they don't talk about it, right? Yeah. When leaders are called of God, it's really hard to come back and be like, that one was called of God, but he also touched your child. Like, that's really but some of the things that I look back on now, I'm like, wow, that was inappropriate. Like, when you're 12, when you're 8, you meet with your bishop to see if you're worthy to get baptized, and they ask you about your sexual purity, including masturbation. You're talking a 50-year-old man in a room with me, an 8-year-old girl, which my dad was my bishop at the time. So at least there was that. At least it was somebody I knew. But with a 8-year-old little girl, asking her if she masturbates. In what world is that appropriate? But it seems appropriate when you give that man authority, and he sits in front of you every Sunday, and he leads your congregation.
And everybody in the community looks up to him, respects him.
It would have been so easy for a line to have gotten crossed and for me not to, as an 8-year-old, understand the difference. Yeah. So that's part of it, is you giving people authority like that. And I mean, and then also celibacy, I just think, is the worst thing to teach people. Like, right. It's because you have to teach people sexual lines. There are lines. If you think all sexual thought and feeling and action is all equally bad, then if you cross that line, what stops you from going all the way? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't, I don't know.
It's not a great pedestal of morality to say all, everything that is not celibacy is bad. It's like, okay, well then which is worse? Is this worse or is this worse? It turns into a gray area. Versus if you have basic rules like consent, understanding of what constitutes adulthood, those things, it's like, okay, now society is starting to kind of guide you into what society would consider to be morally correct. Right.
Well, like, you look at a common scenario you get in the among the Protestant denominations, where yes, there is straight up pedophilia happening, but it's not as common. What you get more often is a young pastor fresh out of college, not married yet, first job is as a youth pastor, and he starts fucking the 14, 15, and 16-year-old girls in the youth group. That's the most common scenario you get there. He's not allowed to have sex because he's not married, but he's got this easy access to these...
power and authority. Yep. Like, that's why you see so many cult leaders end up there too, like end up having sex with all of their, whoever they want in their group, and
no matter what the age is,
because you get power and validation from everyone around you that you're doing the work of God, and it's just really easy to excuse yourself for bad behavior.
Joseph Smith and David Koresh is both great examples of that, where they got that level of power and started taking other men's wives.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, really shady stuff. Joseph Smith, really shady stuff. And that's the other thing I didn't know until really recently, that Joseph Smith was not in jail for being Mormon. The problem was he was trying to steal people's wives. He was like,
it's what he was doing,
and maybe
not
not
what he
so
was.
borderline raping people. Like, he was doing some really just straight up immoral stuff. But at church, they were like, no, it was because he was a Mormon, and Satan was working on these people's minds to like take him to, and they wanted to murder him. And they're like, no, they wanted to murder him because he was trying to rape their wives.
He was also literally defrauding people out of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bad stuff.
He was not a good dude. He's not a good dude.
All right.
Oh.
Well, Mary, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. Next time you'll have to have Robert come by.
Yeah. Yep.
And what do you have coming up?
I am coaching Boise's Funniest Person this year. So if you are local, check out the shows. I'm not on any more of them, but my contestant is.
That's always fun.
I'm also.
You still got a dog in the fight.
Yep, I got a dog in the fight. He made top 10, so hopefully we'll find out this week if he makes top 5. I'm also on Goodness Gracious, which is August 8th. All of the proceeds to that go to Planned Parenthood. So that is a good one. If you're local, come check that out August 8th.
Where is that?
It's at Liquid.
Okay.
It's at Liquid, yeah. So that's
Liquid
a good
Comedy
one.
Club.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good one to come check out.
That's a good one.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Dustin.
And all that remains is to remind you, not all those who wander are lost. Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Atheist Nomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.